The mining ship Endurance drifted through the graveyard of dead ships like a scavenger picking through bones. Captain Elena Vasquez pressed her face against the cold viewport and watched the twisted metal hulks float past in the eternal darkness. Somewhere in this mess of destroyed warships was their next paycheck. "Another day in paradise," muttered Jake Morrison, her second-in-command, as he checked the scanner readings. "The Thrakenor are paying good credits for any intact weapon systems we can pull from these wrecks." Elena nodded but said nothing. The irony wasn't lost on her that humans were being paid to salvage weapons that would probably be used against other human settlements. But that was life in the galaxy now. Humans did what they were told, took what jobs they could get, and tried to survive another day. It had been 50 years since the aliens found Earth. 50 years since humanity learned they were not alone in the universe. 50 years since they discovered that being alone might have been better. The galaxy belonged to 4 great powers now. The Vexhi ruled the northern sectors with their crystal cities and mind powers. The Thrakenor controlled the eastern regions with their endless swarms of insect warriors. The Luminar Collective owned the southern territories, beings of pure energy that humans couldn't even look at directly. And in the west, the Mordun hegemony pulled strings from the shadows, their shape-shifting abilities making them perfect spies and assassins. Together, these 4 empires called themselves the Dominion Coalition. They had divided the galaxy between them like children sharing toys. Except the toys were entire star systems, and the children were ancient alien races with weapons that could crack planets in half. Humanity had been classified as a Class 7 species. That put them somewhere between useful pets and disposable tools. Humans were good for manual labor, dangerous jobs, and dying in wars they had nothing to do with. Earth itself had been stripped of most of its valuable metals and rare elements. The remaining human population was scattered across 100 different worlds, working in mines, factories, and anywhere else the aliens needed cheap labor. "Got something big on the scanners," called out Maria Santos from her position at the sensor station. "Looks like a capital ship, mostly intact." "It's definitely not from any of the Dominion fleets." Elena felt a spark of interest. Unknown ships were rare in the graveyard. Most of the wrecks here were from the last big war between the Vexhi and the Thrakenor, about 200 years ago. But sometimes, very rarely, they found something older, something from before the Dominion ruled everything. "Take us in closer," she ordered. "But keep the engines warm. If this thing has any active defenses, we're out of here fast." The Endurance moved carefully through the debris field. Elena's crew of 12 humans had been working together for 3 years now. They were good at their job, which mainly involved not getting killed while pulling valuable scrap from dangerous wrecks. It wasn't glamorous work, but it paid better than most jobs available to humans. As they got closer, Elena could see that Maria was right. The ship was huge, easily the size of a Dominion battlecruiser. But its design was completely different from anything she had ever seen. Where Dominion ships were all sharp angles and obvious weapons, this ship looked almost organic. Its hull curved and flowed like it had been grown rather than built. "I've never seen anything like it," whispered Tom Chen, their young engineer. "Look at those markings on the hull. They're not in any language I recognize." Elena studied the strange symbols carved into the ship's armor. They seemed to shift and change when she wasn't looking directly at them. "How old do you think it is?" "Hard to say," Jake replied, checking his readings. "But the metal composition is weird. It's not corroding like it should be after sitting out here for centuries. This thing could be thousands of years old." They found a docking port that still had atmosphere behind it. Elena suited up with Jake and Maria, leaving the rest of the crew on the Endurance with strict orders to run if anything went wrong. Inside the alien ship, their helmet lights revealed corridors that stretched away into darkness. The walls were covered in more of the strange writing, and the air still carried traces of an atmosphere that had once supported life. "Motion sensors are picking up something," Maria reported, her voice tense over the radio. "But it's not moving like a person. More like machinery." They followed the readings deeper into the ship. Elena tried not to think about how far they were from safety. Salvage work was dangerous enough when you knew what you were dealing with. Unknown alien technology could kill you in ways you couldn't even imagine. They found what they were looking for in what looked like the ship's main computer core. Banks of strange equipment lined the walls, still humming with power after who knew how many years. In the center of the room stood a pillar of crystalline material that pulsed with soft blue light. "This is incredible," Tom breathed over the radio from the Endurance. I'm reading massive data storage capacity. This thing could hold the entire human internet 1,000 times over. Elena approached the crystal pillar carefully. As she got closer, words began to appear in the air around it. Not words in any language she knew, but somehow she could understand them anyway. Archive of the Architects, she read aloud. Final records of the war against the Dominion. Jake grabbed her arm. Elena, we need to get out of here. If the Dominion powers find out about this. But Elena was already reaching for the crystal. The moment her gloved hand touched its surface, the room filled with light and images. She saw star maps showing the galaxy as it had been thousands of years ago. She saw battles between the Architects and the 4 Dominion races. She saw weapons and technologies that made current Dominion equipment look like stone tools. And she saw the Architects' final message. The Dominion had not always ruled the galaxy. Once, hundreds of different species had lived in peace, sharing knowledge and working together. The Architects had been the guardians of this golden age, keeping the peace and protecting the smaller species from those who would conquer them. But the 4 Dominion races had grown too powerful and too ambitious. They had banded together, not out of friendship but out of shared greed. One by one, they had destroyed the peaceful species or enslaved them. The Architects had fought a desperate war to stop them, but in the end, even they had fallen. The crystal showed Elena detailed battle plans, weapon schematics, and most importantly, the weaknesses of each Dominion race. The Vexai's mind powers could be blocked with the right kind of energy field. The Thraknor's hive mind could be disrupted with specific sound frequencies. The Luminar Collective could be trapped in energy loops if you knew how to set them up. And the Morden could be detected and exposed despite their shape-shifting abilities. Elena, we've got company. Jake's voice cracked with fear. 3 Thraknor patrol ships just dropped out of hyperspace. They're headed this way fast. Elena yanked her hand away from the crystal, but the damage was done. The knowledge was in her head now, burning like fire. She grabbed the crystal itself, ripping it free from its housing. Alarms began wailing throughout the ancient ship. Move. Everyone back to the ship now. They ran through the corridors as the Architect ship's systems began shutting down around them. Behind them, Elena could hear the Thraknor ships getting closer. Their weapons would turn the Endurance into scrap metal in seconds. They barely made it to their ship before the first Thraknor vessels arrived. Jake fired up the engines while Elena strapped herself in, still clutching the Architect crystal. The Endurance shot out of the graveyard just as green energy beams lit up the space where they had been. Hyperspace now, Elena shouted. The stars stretched into lines as they jumped to safety. But Elena knew there was no real safety anymore. What she had found would change everything. The question was whether humanity would live long enough to use it. In her hands, the crystal pulsed with ancient knowledge and the promise of hope. The message traveled through hidden channels that most humans didn't even know existed. From salvage crews to factory workers, from deep space miners to servants on alien worlds. The word spread in whispers and coded transmissions. Someone had found something that could change everything. Marcus Chen received the message while pretending to repair air recycling systems on Vexai Station Omega 7. To anyone watching, he was just another human maintenance worker, invisible and unimportant. They didn't know he was one of the most wanted men in the galaxy. Marcus had once been Earth's ambassador to the Dominion Council. That was before he learned the truth about humanity's future in the galaxy, before he discovered the Dominion's long-term plans for the human race, before he decided that diplomacy was just another word for slow suicide. Now he led what the aliens called terrorist cells and what humans called hope. The resistance movement had been growing slowly for 15 years, but they had never been able to do more than minor sabotage and rescue operations. They lacked the weapons and technology to fight the Dominion openly, but this message was different. A salvage captain named Elena Vasquez claimed to have found Architect technology, real weapons and defenses from the legendary species that had once challenged the Dominion and nearly won. Marcus finished his work on the air system and made his way through the station's lower levels. Most aliens never came down here, where humans lived in cramped quarters and breathed recycled air that always tasted like metal. It was perfect for secret meetings. He found Elena waiting in Storage Bay 7 along with 2 members of her crew. She was younger than he had expected, maybe 35, with the kind of hard eyes that came from seeing too much. She held a crystal device that pulsed with soft blue light. "You're Chen?" she asked without ceremony. "I'm someone who wants to hear what you have to say." he replied carefully. Even among the resistance, you never knew who might be a Morden shapeshifter in disguise. Elena placed the crystal on a metal crate between them. This contains the complete military database of a species called the Architects. They fought the Dominion 3,000 years ago and almost won. Everything we need to know about Dominion weaknesses is in here. Prove it, Marcus said. Elena touched the crystal and it projected a holographic star map into the air above them. The Vexhi tell everyone their psionic powers can't be blocked. That's a lie. The Architects developed energy shields that completely stopped mental attacks. The map shifted, showing battle formations and weapon designs. The Thraknor want you to believe their hive mind makes them unbeatable in large numbers. But if you disrupt their communication frequencies with these specific sound patterns, they become just confused insects. Marcus leaned forward, his heart racing. If this was real. The Luminar Collective claims to be beings of pure energy that can't be contained, Elena continued. But energy follows rules. The Architects built devices that could trap them in recursive loops, making them prisoners of their own power. And the Morden shapeshift by reading genetic patterns. These scanners can detect the quantum signatures they leave behind, no matter what form they take. She touched the crystal again, and the hologram changed to show weapon schematics and manufacturing instructions. It's all here, Chen. Everything we need to fight back. Marcus stared at the swirling data. After 15 years of hiding and running, of watching his people suffer under alien rule, he was looking at a chance for real resistance. How many people know about this? Just my crew and now you, Elena replied. But that needs to change fast. The Thraknor saw us leave that wreck. They'll be looking for us, and when they start investigating, they'll figure out what we found. Then we move quickly, Marcus decided.
I have contacts throughout the Resistance network.
Safe houses, weapons caches, people ready to fight if they have something to fight with. But we'll need to be careful. The Dominion has been hunting resistance cells for years. Over the next 3 weeks, the knowledge from the Architect Crystal spread through the human underground like wildfire. In hidden bases and secret workshops, human engineers and technicians worked around the clock to build the new weapons and defensive systems. The first test came sooner than anyone expected. A resistance cell on Thraknor Colony 6 had been discovered and surrounded by alien security forces. Normally that would have meant capture, torture, and execution for everyone involved. But this time was different. Sarah Kim had been leading the cell on Colony 6 for 2 years. She was a former Earth Navy officer who had refused to surrender when the aliens conquered her homeworld. When the security forces surrounded their hideout, she activated the first prototype energy shield built from Architect designs. The Thraknor warriors tried their usual tactic of overwhelming their enemies with telepathic fear, the kind of mental assault that had broken human resistance fighters for decades. The fear hit the energy shield and simply stopped like water hitting a wall. For the first time in 50 years, humans fought Thraknor soldiers on equal terms. The battle lasted 6 hours and ended with the complete destruction of the alien security force. Not a single human was lost. Word of the victory spread faster than the Dominion could contain it. Suddenly, resistance cells that had been hiding for years began striking at alien targets. Human workers sabotaged factories and power plants. Maintenance crews disabled space station defense systems. Transport pilots began smuggling weapons and supplies to rebel bases. Marcus coordinated the growing rebellion from New Thermopylae, a hidden base built inside a rogue planet drifting in the empty space between star systems. The base had been under construction for 8 years, carved out of solid rock by human miners who believed in freedom more than safety. We're getting reports from 17 different sectors, reported Lisa Park, his intelligence officer. Resistance activity is up 300% in just 2 weeks. The Dominion powers are starting to panic. Marcus studied the tactical displays showing rebel activity across the galaxy. Red dots marked successful attacks. Blue dots showed liberated human settlements, and yellow dots indicated areas where fighting was still ongoing. There were a lot more red and blue dots than he had ever dared to hope for. What about alien responses? He asked. That's the interesting part, Lisa replied. The 4 Dominion races can't agree on how to handle this. The Vexhi want to increase psionic surveillance, but their mind reading doesn't work through our new shields. The Thraknor are sending more troops, but they keep walking into ambushes set up by rebels with Architect scanners. The Luminar Collective is trying to shut down power to rebel areas, but we're trapping their energy beings faster than they can replace them. And the Morden? Still trying to infiltrate our cells, but the quantum scanners are catching them. We've exposed and eliminated over 30 shapeshifter spies in the last week alone. Marcus allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. For the first time since the aliens had conquered Earth, humanity was fighting back with weapons that actually worked. But he knew the Dominion wouldn't take these losses quietly forever. His fears proved correct 3 days later. Emergency transmissions flooded the rebel communication networks with the same terrible message. The 4 Dominion powers had done something they hadn't done in over a century. They had put aside their constant conflicts and formed a true alliance. The message was broadcast on every communication frequency in the galaxy, translated into hundreds of languages. It was simple and direct. The human infestation will be cleansed. Any settlement harboring rebels will be destroyed. Any species assisting human terrorists will share their fate. Surrender now or face extinction. To prove they were serious, the combined Dominion fleets began systematically destroying human colonies. Entire worlds were turned to glass by orbital bombardment. Space habitats were shattered and left as debris. Millions of humans died in the first week alone. But something had changed in humanity. Instead of the fear and despair the Dominion expected, their genocide campaign was met with rage and determination. Human rebels didn't surrender. They struck back harder. Elena Vasquez, now commanding a small fleet of stolen Dominion ships, led a raid on a Vex-High crystal mining operation. Using architect disruption weapons, her forces destroyed equipment worth billions of credits and freed over 10,000 human slaves. Sarah Kim organized coordinated strikes across an entire star system, hitting Thraknor military bases and supply depots simultaneously. Her rebel forces moved like ghosts, appearing long enough to cause maximum damage before vanishing back into hiding. Marcus himself led the most daring operation yet. Using intelligence gathered from captured Morden shapeshifters, his team infiltrated a secret Dominion Council meeting and planted architect quantum bombs in their space station. The explosion could be seen from 3 light-years away. The message was clear to anyone watching. Humanity wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting to win. As Marcus stood in the command center of New Thermopylae, watching reports of victory stream in from across the galaxy, he felt something he hadn't experienced in decades. Hope. Real. Honest hope that his species might actually have a future. The Dominion had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. Admiral Sarah Kim stood on the bridge of the Liberation, humanity's first real warship in 50 years. Built in secret shipyards hidden in asteroid belts, the ship combined human engineering with architect technology in ways that made Dominion commanders wake up screaming. "Tactical report," she ordered, studying the holographic display that showed enemy positions throughout the Kepler sector. "We have confirmed positions on 4 major Dominion fleets," reported Commander Torres. "The Vex-High have 60 ships guarding their crystal farms on Arcturus Prime. The Thraknor swarm fleet is positioned near their breeding worlds in the Centauri system. Luminar collective energy ships are clustered around their power cores in the Vega region. And Morden stealth vessels are scattered throughout the Outer Rim." Sarah nodded grimly. 6 months had passed since the Dominion declared their intention to wipe out humanity. In that time, they had destroyed dozens of human colonies and killed millions of innocent people. But they had also done something they probably regretted now. They had given humanity a common enemy and a reason to unite completely. "What's the status on Operation Prometheus?" she asked. "All strike teams are in position," Torres replied. "Captain Vasquez reports her fleet is ready to hit the Vex-High homeworld. Director Chen's ground forces are prepared to assault the Thraknor hive world. Admiral Park has her energy disruption ships in place near the Luminar core system, and Colonel Morrison's stealth teams have infiltrated Morden space." Sarah took a deep breath. What they were about to attempt had never been done before in galactic history. Simultaneous attacks on all 4 Dominion homeworlds, using their own arrogance and inability to cooperate against them. The plan had come from Marcus Chen, but it was based on something Elena Vasquez had discovered in the architect records. The 4 Dominion races hated each other almost as much as they hated everyone else. Their alliance was one of convenience, not trust. If you could make each of them believe the others were betraying them, the alliance would collapse. "Signal all units," Sarah ordered. "Operation Prometheus is authorized. May humanity forgive us if we fail." Light years away, Elena Vasquez prepared to attack the most heavily defended world in Vex-High space. Vexmore was a planet made entirely of living crystal. where millions of psychic beings lived in towering spires that reached into space itself. It was beautiful, ancient, and completely impossible to assault. At least, it had been impossible before humans learned how to turn Dominion technology against itself. All ships. This is Admiral Vasquez. She broadcast to her fleet of captured and modified alien vessels. Remember, we're not just fighting for ourselves today. Every human who died in the colonies, every slave still suffering in alien chains, every child who will never see Earth again is counting on us. Let's make sure their sacrifice means something. The Vex-High defenders were expecting a conventional attack. Warships approaching through normal space, weapons blazing, shields raised against psychic assault. They had fought this kind of battle 1,000 times against 100 different species. They always won. But Elena's fleet didn't approach through normal space. Using architect phase shift technology, they materialized inside the planet's atmosphere, already past all the orbital defenses. The first the Vex-High knew of the attack was when dimensional disruption bombs began detonating throughout their crystal cities. The bombs didn't just destroy buildings. They shattered the quantum connections that linked every Vex-High mind to their planetary network. For the first time in their species' history, individual Vex-High found themselves truly alone in their own heads. The psychological shock was devastating. Vex-High society was based on shared consciousness and collective decision-making. Without their mental links, they couldn't coordinate defenses, couldn't call for help, couldn't even understand what was happening to them. Elena's ground forces moved through the crystal cities like avenging angels, systematically destroying the quantum amplifiers that maintained the planet's psionic field. Each amplifier that fell reduced the Vex-High's mental powers further, turning the galaxy's most feared psychic warriors into confused, frightened individuals. Halfway across the galaxy, Marcus Chen was having his own problems with the Thraknor homeworld of Hive Prime. Unlike the crystal cities of the Vex-High, Hive Prime was an organic nightmare of tunnels, breeding chambers, and warrior spawning pools that stretched deep into the planet's core. The Thraknor had evolved from insect stock, but millions of years of genetic manipulation had turned them into something far more dangerous. Each warrior was connected to the others through biochemical signals that created a perfect hive mind. Individual Thraknor were smart. Thousands of them working together were terrifyingly intelligent. But Marcus had studied the architect records carefully. Every strength could become a weakness if you knew how to exploit it. Sonic disruptors are in position, reported Major Santos over the radio. Her teams had spent weeks sneaking the devices into the planet's underground tunnel system. Ready to broadcast on your command. Broadcasting biological warfare agents, added Dr. Kim from his orbital platform. The modified viruses wouldn't kill the Thraknor, but they would interfere with their chemical communication systems. Estimated time to full effectiveness is 12 minutes. Marcus watched the tactical display as red dots marked Thraknor forces throughout the tunnel system. There were millions of them, maybe tens of millions. But numbers wouldn't help them if they couldn't work together. All units, execute, he ordered. The sonic disruptors activated simultaneously, broadcasting the specific frequencies that the architects had discovered could disrupt Thraknor hive communications. At the same time, the biological agents spread through the planet's atmosphere, breaking down the chemical signals that allowed individual warriors to share information. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. Thraknor forces that had been moving in perfect coordination suddenly found themselves isolated and confused. Warriors began attacking each other, thinking they were facing enemies instead of allies. Command structures collapsed as officers lost contact with their troops. In space above the planet, Admiral Lisa Park was conducting her own experiment with the Luminar Collective. The energy beings were possibly the most dangerous of the 4 Dominion races because they could exist in multiple states simultaneously. Fighting them was like trying to fight living lightning. But the architects had discovered something interesting about energy-based life forms. They were bound by the same physical laws as everyone else, even if they experienced those laws differently. Energy loop generators are charged and ready, reported her science officer. We're detecting massive luminar activity in the planetary core. They're trying to coordinate a defense. Perfect, Lisa replied. The more of them that gather together, the better this will work. Activate the generators. The architect energy loop technology was brilliantly simple. Instead of trying to destroy energy beings, it trapped them in recursive power cycles that fed on themselves. The more energy a Luminar used to try to escape, the stronger the trap became. Within minutes, dozens of powerful Luminar entities found themselves caught in ever-tightening spirals of their own power. They couldn't escape without using energy, but using energy only made the trap stronger. They were prisoners of their own nature. The fourth strike team was having a very different kind of problem. Colonel Jake Morrison's forces were hunting Mordan shapeshifters throughout their shadow empire in the Outer Rim. But the enemy kept disappearing whenever they got close. "Sir, we've lost contact with Team 7, reported Sergeant Davis. Last transmission indicated they had located a Mordan command center, then nothing. Jake studied his scanner readings. The Architect quantum detection devices could identify shapeshifters regardless of what form they took, but only at close range. The Mordan were experts at hit-and-run tactics, appearing long enough to strike and then vanishing into the asteroid belts and nebulae they called home. But Jake had an advantage the Mordan didn't expect. He had been fighting them for 15 years, ever since they killed his family during the invasion of Earth. He knew how they thought, how they moved, and most importantly, how they made mistakes when they got angry. "All teams, fall back to the outer perimeter," he ordered. "Make it look like we're retreating." "Sir?" Sergeant Davis looked confused. "We're abandoning the mission?" "No, we're giving them what they want," Jake replied with a cold smile. "The Mordan can't resist finishing off a wounded enemy. They'll come after us, and when they do, they'll have to concentrate their forces. That's when we hit them with everything we have." The trap worked perfectly. As Jake's forces appeared to retreat in disorder, Mordan shapeshifters emerged from hiding throughout the sector. They thought they were pursuing a broken human force. Instead, they found themselves surrounded by quantum scanner fields that made their shapeshifting abilities useless. For the first time in centuries, Mordan were forced to fight in their true forms. Without their ability to deceive and infiltrate, they were just another alien species with good technology. And human soldiers had been fighting superior technology for 50 years. The battle was brief and decisive. Fleet Admiral Elena Vasquez stood before the holographic war map that filled the command center of the Architect's dream, humanity's new flagship. The map showed the galaxy as it looked now, 2 years after Operation Prometheus had shattered the Dominion Alliance. Red zones marked areas still controlled by the 4 great powers. Blue zones showed the rapidly expanding Human Liberation Coalition. And everywhere between them, yellow zones indicated the chaos of a galaxy in revolution. "Report on Sector 7, she ordered. Commander Sarah Kim stepped forward. She had been promoted from Admiral to Elena's Chief Strategic Officer after her victories at the Luminar core worlds. The Kefri aquatic species has officially joined the coalition. That brings our total member species to 67. They're offering their deep space exploration ships and underwater manufacturing facilities." Elena nodded. The coalition had grown far beyond what anyone had imagined possible. When humanity had first started fighting back, they had hoped for freedom. Now they were leading the largest liberation movement in galactic history. "What about the former Dominion territories?" "Complete chaos," replied Director Marcus Chen, joining the briefing from his position at the intelligence station. "The Vex-High Empire has fragmented into over 300 separate crystal cities, each claiming to be the true heir to their ancient glory. They're spending more energy fighting each other than they are trying to stop us." Elena studied the northern sectors where Vex-High space used to be a unified block of crystal worlds. Now it looked like a broken window with tiny fragments scattered across dozens of star systems. "The Thraknor are even worse," Marcus continued. "Without their central hive-mind coordination, the swarms have split into millions of smaller groups. Some are still trying to follow their old breeding programs. Some have gone completely feral, and others are actually asking for protection from our forces." "And the Luminar Collective?" "Barely exists," Sarah reported. "After we trapped most of their leadership in energy loops, the remaining beings couldn't maintain their technological infrastructure. Entire systems are going dark as their power networks collapse. Some of the younger Luminar are even trying to learn how to exist in physical bodies." Elena allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The 4 great powers that had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years were falling apart, faster than anyone had predicted. But she knew the real test was still coming. "What about the Mordan?" Marcus's expression darkened. "That's our biggest problem. They've completely abandoned their shadow empire and gone underground. Our quantum scanners can detect them in direct confrontations, but they're avoiding any kind of open warfare. Intelligence suggests they're trying something new, such as, "We think they're attempting to infiltrate the coalition itself," Marcus replied. "Not individual agents like before, but entire fake species. They could be creating artificial alien races to join our alliance and sabotage it from within." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. The Mordun were the most dangerous of the 4 Dominion races precisely because they were the most adaptable. While the others clung to their old ways and old strengths, the shapeshifters learned and evolved. "Double all security protocols," she ordered. "I want quantum scanner checkpoints at every coalition facility, and run deep scans on any new species that wants to join us. The Mordun can change their appearance, but they can't change their quantum signature." A communications alert interrupted the briefing. The face of Admiral Lisa Park appeared on the main screen, broadcasting from the recently liberated Centauri system. "Admiral Vasquez, we have a situation," Lisa reported. "Long-range sensors are detecting massive fleet movements in the former Thraknor core worlds. It looks like someone is trying to reunify the swarms." Elena felt her heart rate increase. A unified Thraknor swarm had been one of the galaxy's greatest nightmares for centuries. "Who's leading them?" "That's the strange part," Lisa replied. "It's not a Thraknor queen. The biosignatures we're picking up are completely unknown. Someone else is taking control of the scattered hive fragments and welding them back together." Marcus leaned forward, his face grim. "The Mordun. They're not just infiltrating the coalition. They're trying to rebuild the other Dominion powers under their control." Elena made a decision that surprised everyone in the room, including herself. "Prepare the fleet for immediate deployment. We're not going to wait for them to finish rebuilding. If the Mordun want to put the old empires back together, they'll have to do it while fighting us at the same time." "Admiral," Sarah protested, "we have over 200 worlds to defend. If we concentrate our forces for a major offensive, then we risk losing everything we've gained," Elena finished. "But if we let the Mordun succeed in rebuilding the Dominion powers, we'll lose anyway. At least this way, we choose the time and place of the final battle." Within hours, the largest human fleet ever assembled was moving through hyperspace toward the former Thraknor core worlds. Elena had committed nearly every warship the Coalition possessed to this single operation. It was a massive gamble, but she had learned something important over the past 2 years of warfare. When you had spent 50 years as slaves, the only choice that mattered was between fighting for freedom and accepting death. Everything else was just details. The battle began the moment Elena's fleet dropped out of hyperspace in the Thraknor home system. What they found there defied everything they thought they knew about the insect warriors. The scattered Thraknor swarms had indeed been reunified, but not under the control of their own species. Thousands of hive ships moved in perfect formation, but the coordination came from Mordun shapeshifters who had taken the place of the swarm queens. The shapeshifters were using Thraknor bodies like puppets, creating a hybrid enemy that combined insect numbers with Mordun intelligence. "All ships, engage at maximum range," Elena ordered. "Don't let them get close enough for boarding actions. If the Mordun can touch our hulls, they can infiltrate our crews." The space battle that followed was unlike anything in recorded history. Human ships, built with architect technology and crewed by people who refused to surrender, faced off against millions of Thraknor warriors controlled by shapeshifting masterminds who had spent centuries learning how to fight. But Elena had advantages the Mordun hadn't counted on. The first was that humanity had been fighting a losing war for 50 years and had gotten very good at it. Human tactics were based on the assumption that the enemy was stronger, faster, and better equipped. When you started with that mindset, you found ways to win that others couldn't imagine. The second advantage was the coalition itself. Human ships weren't fighting alone. Kefri vessels used their water manipulation technology to create massive ice barriers that blocked Thraknor swarm attacks. Crystalline species provided energy shields that could absorb and redirect enemy weapons. Even former Vex High crystal cities had joined the battle, their psychic powers helping to coordinate the diverse coalition forces. Elena, Marcus reported from his position coordinating intelligence operations, were detecting Mordun infiltration attempts on the Silver Dawn and the New Earth. The shapeshifters are trying to board our ships during the battle. Deploy the quantum scanner drones, Elena ordered. I want every square meter of our ships monitored. Any crew member who doesn't match their quantum signature gets spaced immediately. The battle raged for 18 hours. Thraknor swarms hurled themselves against coalition defenses while Mordoon shapeshifters tried every trick they had learned in 3 millennia of warfare. But for every human ship they destroyed, 2 more appeared from hidden positions. For every coalition crew they infiltrated, quantum scanners exposed them and sealed their fate. By the end of the battle, the reformed Thraknor swarm was scattered debris floating in space. The Mordoon command structure that had tried to control them was destroyed. And Elena's fleet had proven something that would echo across the galaxy for generations to come. Humanity wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting to win, and when they fought to win, no enemy was too powerful to defeat. But the victory came with a cost. Elena had lost nearly a third of her fleet in the battle. Thousands of coalition personnel were dead or wounded, and intelligence reports suggested that similar Mordoon rebuilding efforts were underway in former Vexhai and Luminar territories. "Admiral," Sarah reported as they surveyed the aftermath of the battle, "we're receiving communications from across the galaxy. News of our victory here has triggered uprisings on over 100 worlds. Species that have been afraid to resist are finally fighting back." Elena looked at the tactical display showing rebellion markers spreading across the galaxy like wildfire. Each marker represented millions of beings who had decided that freedom was worth fighting for, no matter the cost. "Signal all coalition forces," she ordered. "We're not stopping here. The Mordoon want to rebuild the old empires? Fine. We'll tear them down faster than they can put them back together." It was a bold statement, but Elena meant every word. Humanity had spent 50 years learning how to survive under impossible odds. Now they were teaching the rest of the galaxy that survival wasn't enough. When you fought back, when you refused to accept defeat, when you turned your enemies. Supreme Commander Elena Vasquez stood on the observation deck of the Architect's Dream, looking out at a sight that would have been impossible to imagine 5 years ago. Earth hung in space before her, blue and green and beautiful, with the scars of alien strip mining finally healed. Around the restored homeworld, ships from over 200 different species worked together to build the largest space station in galactic history. The new Geneva station would serve as the capital of the liberated territories, a democratic alliance that now controlled more than half the known galaxy. It was being built not by slaves or conquered peoples, but by free beings who had chosen to work together toward a common future. The morning reports. "Commander," said Admiral Sarah Kim, approaching with a datapad. Sarah had been promoted to Elena's second-in-command after the final battles that broke the last of the Mordoon resistance. "The Vexhai Crystal Republic has officially joined the territories. That makes us the largest political entity in galactic history." Elena accepted the reports but continued looking out at Earth. It was hard to believe how much had changed. Where once there had been 4 great empires ruling through fear and oppression, now there were hundreds of small republics and democracies working together through cooperation and mutual respect. "Any word from Director Chen's deep space missions?" "The exploration fleets have confirmed it," Sarah replied with excitement in her voice. "Long-range sensors have detected artificial signals from the Andromeda galaxy. There's definitely another galactic civilization out there, and based on the signal patterns, it's at least as advanced as the old Dominion was." Elena nodded thoughtfully. Marcus Chen now headed the Galactic Liberation Institute, an organization dedicated to spreading the ideals of freedom and democracy throughout the universe. His teams of volunteers traveled to distant regions, helping oppressed peoples overthrow their own tyrants and establish free governments. What's his assessment of the Andromeda signals? "He thinks they might be dealing with their own version of the Dominion problem," Sarah explained. "The signals show signs of massive conflicts and systematic oppression of weaker species. Marcus is recommending we prepare for eventual contact and possible intervention." Elena smiled. 5 years ago, humanity had been nothing more than slaves scraping by on the edges of galactic civilization. Now they were discussing whether to liberate an entire other galaxy. It was almost funny if it weren't so serious. "Tell Marcus to proceed with his recommendations," she decided. "If there are beings in Andromeda suffering under tyranny, they deserve the same chance at freedom we fought for." A communication alert interrupted their conversation. The holographic image of Captain Torres appeared, broadcasting from the Outer Rim territories where the last Mordoon holdouts were still being hunted down. "Commander Vasquez, we have a situation," Torres reported. "We've found them. The final Mordoon stronghold. It's bigger than we expected, and they're not alone. Elena felt a familiar tension in her shoulders. The Morden had been the most adaptable of the 4 Dominion races, and hunting down their scattered remnants had taken 3 years of careful investigation. What do you mean they're not alone? They've gathered survivors from all 4 of the old Dominion species, Torres explained. Vex High Crystal Lords who refuse to join the New Republic. Thraknor Queen Mothers who still believe in the old hive system. Luminar energy beings who want to restore their collective. And of course, thousands of Morden shapeshifters. They're calling themselves the True Dominion. Elena exchanged glances with Sarah. They had both known this day would come eventually. Not every member of the old empires had been willing to accept the new democratic order. Some still believed in the right of the strong to rule over the weak. How many ships are we looking at? Elena asked. Conservative estimate? Around 5,000 vessels, Torres replied. They've been building in secret for years using resources stolen from Liberation Zone territories. And Commander, they have hostages. The entire population of the Kepler colony. Over 2 million beings from dozens of species. Elena closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Kepler colony was one of the first mixed-species settlements established after the Liberation Wars. It was a symbol of everything the new galactic order represented. Of course the True Dominion would target it. Signal the fleet, she ordered. All available ships are to rendezvous at coordinates 77 Alpha. We're going to end this once and for all. The final battle of the Liberation Wars took place in the debris field, where Elena had first discovered the architect Crystal 5 years earlier. It seemed fitting that the conflict that began there would end there as well. The True Dominion fleet was impressive, she had to admit. 5,000 ships crewed by fanatics who would rather die than accept a galaxy where their species weren't the supreme rulers. They had positioned themselves around Kepler colony like a living shield, daring the liberation forces to attack and risk civilian casualties. But Elena had learned a few things about warfare over the past 5 years. She had also learned something even more important about leadership and the responsibilities that came with power. This is Supreme Commander. Vasquez of the liberated territories, she broadcast on all frequencies. To the civilians of Kepler colony and to the crews of the True Dominion fleet, I want you to understand what's about to happen here. She paused, choosing her words carefully. This message would be recorded and studied by historians for generations to come. 5 years ago, my people were slaves. We had no voice in galactic affairs, no rights that others were bound to respect, and no hope that our children would live better lives than we did. We were told this was the natural order of things, that some species were born to rule and others born to serve. Elena looked out at the enemy fleet surrounding the civilian station. We chose to fight back. Not because we wanted to conquer anyone, not because we believed humans were superior to other species, but because we believed that freedom was the right of every thinking being in the universe. She activated the tactical display so that everyone listening could see what she was looking at. Today, over 200 species live together in peace and equality in the liberated territories. Former enemies work side by side. Children of different species play together on worlds their parents could never have imagined sharing. This is what we fought for. This is what we're still fighting for. The display shifted to show the True Dominion fleet. The beings in those ships represent the old way of thinking. They believe that strength gives them the right to rule others. They believe that different species cannot coexist as equals. They believe that peace can only come through conquest and oppression. Elena's voice hardened. They are wrong, and we are going to prove it. The Liberation Fleet that Elena commanded was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. Over 10,000 ships from hundreds of different species, all working together with a coordination that would have been impossible under the old Dominion system. But Elena didn't want to win this battle through superior numbers or better technology. She wanted to win it in a way that would send a message to anyone else who might be tempted to restore the old ways. Attention True Dominion forces, she broadcast. You have 1 hour to release your hostages and surrender. Anyone who lays down their weapons will be given fair trial and the chance to emigrate to territories that still practice the old systems of government. We are not here to destroy you. We are here to free the people you have taken hostage. The response came from someone identifying himself as Supreme Overlord Zethkar, apparently a Morden who had taken the form of an ancient Vex High Crystal Lord. Humans, you have poisoned the galaxy with your weakness and your primitive ideals of equality. Today we restore the natural order. The strong will rule as they always have. I gave you a chance, Elena replied simply. Remember that. The battle lasted exactly 47 minutes. The True Dominion fought with the desperation of fanatics. But fanaticism was no match for the coordinated efforts of free peoples fighting to protect their way of life. Liberation forces used minimal casualty tactics developed specifically for situations involving hostages. Quantum disruptors disabled enemy weapons without destroying the ships themselves. Precision boarding parties led by volunteers from every member species of the territories captured enemy vessels with surgical strikes that avoided damage to civilian areas. When the shooting stopped, the True Dominion fleet was captured almost intact, and casualties on both sides were remarkably light. More importantly, every hostage on Kepler Colony was rescued alive and unharmed. In the aftermath of the battle, Elena found herself facing the most difficult decision of her career. The leaders of the True Dominion were war criminals who had enslaved and murdered billions of beings over the course of millennia. Under the old systems of justice, they would have been executed immediately, but the liberated territories had been founded on different principles. They will receive fair trials, Elena announced to the assembled fleet commanders. They will be given competent legal representation. They will be allowed to present evidence in their defense, and if they are found guilty, they will be sentenced according to the laws we have all agreed to follow.